courage to fight through it, and the willingness and like the energy and all the stuff that like was getting sucked out of me. So that was the most challenging part of my whole life was that, like, just dealing with it, enduring what I couldn't change, and then like having to like talk to people, go to therapists, like do all this stuff, trying to like understand it and unearth like all the emotions that have been stored for 25 years of not dealing with them. That was the worst.
What do you want to do with your future?
It's like this is the hardest possible question you could ask me, and here's why. It's like, I want to say, all right, in 2 years, have a nice little house somewhere, get married, start a family, live in that town, visit my friends from time to time, just teach, play sports, and that's it. Like, I want that to be this future that I'm like working towards, but I actually, like, I can't. Like, I am addicted in a good and terrible way to this notion that I can be a very successful singer-songwriter in a band. That's been like my driving force for not committing to anything that would ever prevent that from happening. And it's been like this annoying, like feeling, like intense, like a desperation. I have to achieve it. It's like, it feels like everything about me is telling me this is like what I belong doing. Like teaching was like that for a long time, and it still is to some extent, but it's this other thing. So my whole future, like, I just desperately want the songs that I write, the words that I write, I want them to matter to people. I want the songs to be lovely, and I want people to want to listen to them, and I want them to learn from them and feel things from them, and want to come see me and my friends like perform them. And that's it. And it's like, you could take away my apartment, my car, and everything, and I would be totally happy if I could just have like that one thing. And it's like, if I had to choose another person or like compromise or like get involved in long-term relationships or anything that where I'd have to compromise that possibility, I won't do it. And I don't know if that's what I want to do with my future. Like, I want this band to be something. I want to see how great I can get it. Like, it's starting to get good. Like, every year it gets better and better, but I also get older and older, and it's harder to commit to it. So there's a lot of things I want for my future, but I don't want them enough to actually pursue them. Like, I want this other thing. Like, I want the band to work. I want to be a singer-songwriter for the rest of my life. So that's the plan.
Are you in any bands right now?
Yeah, I've been in one. I mean, I had almost the same band for 5 years now. And so there's been moving parts, just people coming in and out, and like it keeps getting better every time we add a new member. And so the band's called Steeples and Satellites, which is the name of a song I wrote that like roughly gets the idea that there's like this juxtaposition of like religion and science, you know, that's like a thing that people have to resolve or pick sides or whatever. And, so it's supposed to be like a band. The band name is like supposed to be sort of this deep, thoughtful thing that reflects what we're trying to accomplish, like musically and lyrically.
What's one thing that you're really, really proud of?
There's a lot of there were things. It's like times change. Like, there are things that like. What makes me happy is when I accomplish the things I want to accomplish the way I want them to be accomplished. Like, that's what happiness is for me. I finally figured out, like, when I have a goal, I set it and I do it, and I don't care if everyone else doesn't like the outcome. Like, if it's how I wanted it to be done, then I'm as happy as can be. And if everyone else loves it and I hate it, like, I'm not happy about that. So, I think the things I'm proud of before I started teaching were all like things that I accomplished, like, personally. I'm really proud of my ski career. I'm proud of like getting into the high schools and the colleges that I wanted to, and like graduating from them. Those are great. Like, I had a lot of success, and then the next 15 years at Meadowbrook, I was like proud of the things that like people accomplished that I was a part of, like some of the athletes that I've coached over the years that have like gone on to like compete almost at like the Olympic level. Like, I'm really proud of those, and like other kids that I taught that I like just helped keep them afloat while they went through awkwardness in middle school that became successful. Like, I'm most proud of those moments. So it's like people who I worked with a lot here, that ended up either going on to do great things specifically in something I taught them, or just like ended up doing great. And I know I helped get them through some like of the harder times. So those are like when I think back on the best accomplishments in my life, it's way more like what I've been able to like guide other younger people to do. And there's like hundreds of examples of that. But like some of them are obvious, like the kids who like took athletics to the farthest or music to the highest. Like there's a few people that are making movies professionally that like started here making movies, like things like that.
I think you mentioned that you like learned psychology in college. What are some like what majors and minors did you choose, and like why did you choose them?
I was into history. I thought it'd be at first I started with the economics. I just want money, even though I didn't really. I took econ freshman year, and I was like, this is so boring and stupid. Nobody needs this. So then I started taking history classes, and then I started realizing that you could take 4 classes or you could take 3 classes. And I was like, well, if I just took 3 classes, then I wouldn't have to work very hard. And it never like occurred to me that you had to eventually make up those classes and like go to summer school or like not graduate on time or whatever. So then I stopped like taking 4 classes and just started taking 3, taking it really easy in college. And then I had to get caught up, and then I realized like halfway through, like maybe towards the end of sophomore year, you had to declare a major. And I realized that based on like the random classes I'd been taking, the only major I could have was psychology and actually graduate on time, because I'd already taken enough of the prerequisites that I could get a psych degree. Like if I wanted history, I was going to have to take another year of college because I hadn't taken enough history classes to be a history major at that point. So there was like some planning you needed to do. But I was in psych classes because I was interested in them. And I feel like before there was cell phones and all this stuff, there was a thing called people watching. Like, is people watching a phrase you're accustomed to or heard it?
Kind of.
Like, not really. Like, people watching was the thing you would do. Like, you'd go down to, like, the mall, or you'd go down to because there was you couldn't do online shopping. You wanted to buy anything, everyone had to go to one place and walk around it and buy things. And what you'd do when you weren't buying things, you would just sit there and you'd stare at people. You'd watch them go by. You'd see what they were wearing. There was no TV or internet to watch YouTube. Like your YouTube was sitting down at like the bus stop or like at a cafe just looking at people. And nobody had a phone, so everyone was like doing interesting things, having conversations. You'd listen in, like, and it was just people watching. And I was like, so I was always drawn to that. Like I did it automatically. Like I understood people's behaviors. And I could almost predict what they were going to be like just by watching like how they held their cup of coffee or like what the conversation they were having. I could tell if they liked each other or who hated each other. Like I just felt like that I had this deep understanding of people, and it was so fascinating that somebody like these scientists, these psychologists, nerds had gone through and assigned words to all these behaviors and interactions and stuff. It was like, so when I started taking psychology, I was like, I already know all of this stuff. I just didn't realize there was like a word you could call it. That was like, there was like something you could study that the way people acted was actually like was known, and it was predictable to some extent. So I loved that, and I loved the teachers. Like the psych professors were always my favorite. Like the way they thought about the world when they saw it, and the way they looked at people. I liked them, and I wanted to keep taking their classes. So it was very accidental that I was a psych major, but if I could do it all again, I would have done exactly what I did, because I just loved the field of thinking about people. And now it's like, it's weird because everybody's behavior is so different because now there's cell phones. So like you go out in public, you used to have to like look away real fast and not get busted like staring at people and like listening in, but now everyone's so oblivious. You can sit on the corner and stare at anyone, like look at their clothes and be like, what are you wearing? Why are you doing this? Why are you acting like that? Like, because nobody's paying any attention. It's very weird. But yeah, my psych interest started with people watching. And then as a writer, you have to like, you got to be able to describe what people are thinking, especially in film. You got to be able to write, you got to explain to your audience what people are thinking, but you have to show it in their actions and their attire and stuff like that. So psychology was very close to character, which is close to writing. So it was like, that was the bridge, because I always loved writing also. It's 6:40. I just want you to know what time it is, so we don't make anybody mad.
Do Do you know when we started? Or
Here, this will tell me how long it's been running. I think you've gone 39 minutes, I think, or 41. One of the two.
okay, so a few more minutes.
This is like therapy. I'll talk about my life and my feelings all day.
What do you think of like, well, our class right now? Like, if you could predict like what we would be in the future, like, do you think we'll stay in contact or like things like that?
When I think about your current class and where you'll be in a few years, I think that what is interesting about time is it's like this very good filtration system where it's like you just take everybody in, it like filters away, and then some people will, and this so I can almost base it out like if I was looking at the last 10 classes, they all kind of behave the same way, which is like 3 or 4 stay very close all the way through high school, sometimes even closer than their other friends, and they make it in high school. 5 or 6 totally disappear. Like, no one ever seen or heard from them again. Like, there are kids who graduated from 8th grade that I have never seen again after seeing them every day for 10 years. So it's definitely like the bell curve. So 5 or 6 will stay incredibly close friends all the way through high school, maybe more. And then 5 or 6 will disappear and you will never hear from them again. Or maybe you'll be one of those on either side, I don't know. And then in the middle, it's kind of like the curve. Like, people will end up at the same high schools, but their friendships won't stay the same. People will not end up in the same high schools, and their friendships will get a little better. They'll like the way everyone's interconnected. On the internet now, it's like everyone's going to be friends of friends. It's like this little prep school world is very small, and so like I think people will continue to stay in each other's circles, but it'll be kind of it'll be different, and so like people who weren't really friends here will go to the same high school, and they'll actually be closer there, or they'll totally ignore each other. But no one's relationships will stay the same, and that's fine. That's part of growing up and moving on. But I think some of the girls in your class who have been friends for 10 years, I think they will stay very close. I think a lot of people who just came in middle school for a couple of years, I think it's not the same type of bond, even though it's like more intense and more memorable and present. So I think that sometimes those people drift a little bit, and I think the boys have like this weird blob of a friendship that's just like they're close friends with whoever happens to be sitting next to them. And I think they'll all probably go their separate ways for a while, and then we'll see. But there is like a reunion next year where nothing's really changed when you go back in the room. And there's one right before college, and that's where you see who shows up even.
Why did you decide to start going to Costa Rica?
Me personally, when they got back after the first year, I was like amazed at the difference I saw in the kids that went. I was like after 10 days they were like grown-ups, and that trip was a little more intense. Like, they actually had been through some experiences that were even more life-changing in some ways, but it was also like super intense, and not the whole class could have done it. It didn't used to be like a whole class thing. So I always wanted to go just because it like seemed fun, and it seemed like a good way to go. Like, I wanted to go on all the trips. We used to have trips at the beginning of the year, like back for every grade, and I loved those, and I loved Gettysburg. So I just wanted to go. Like, that's where the fun was. That's where the action was. And I was just like, the first year I almost got to go, but they were like, he's kind of young and a little too irresponsible. We don't want to send him on this one. So I got cut by the old middle school head. She's like, sorry, like, parents don't trust you enough yet to take kids to another country. And so I was really disappointed by that. Mostly because it just seemed like the most fun, exciting part of the whole school year at any grade. At the beginning it was pretty much selfish. Like, I just wanted to go, and then I saw what happened, what was down there, and all the possibilities, and then I think 2 or 3 years later, like, I ran the trip how I wanted it, and then it was like, and then other people have done it since. So, but at first it was just like I wanted to go because it was like the coolest, most exciting thing. I didn't have any experience international. I'd been to Costa Rica before, but I never led a trip before or anything.
So how do you think people change from like, well, from Beckett to Costa Rica?
The change is so incredible. I think you change more during that phase of your life than any other 2.5 years ever. So it's like if we put everybody in like a bubble, you would change the most in your life. You know what I mean? It's just like physically, emotionally, intellectually, everything happens. And so it's like Barbara Benson, who was the assistant head here for a long time, and she was my favorite mentor as a teacher. She was an incredible thinker. She described middle school as like you actually finally get to see what the people are going to be that were like the kids you knew, and so it's like when you show up at the beginning of Beckett, it's like children, like it's the end of being children, but it's like cute little kids, not that distinguishable from fourth or fifth graders, like just not that different, like the genders aren't even that different. It's just like everybody's just like this kid, and then by the end of Costa Rica, it's like pretty obvious what your personality and your adult likeness will be in a few years. It's like it's shocking, and so it's like so much happens with identity over those years. You really like you figure out who you're going to be and what you're going to be like, and some of that just like your genetics and then some of it is just what you experience. So Beckett to Costa Rica is like night and day. It's like the same person, but it's like it's like the difference between like a baby and an adult, and it's like the end of childhood and the beginning of adulthood. Like it's where the transition happens. You've got baby, kid happens, and you've got like adult, and not much changes, and then there's these 2.5 years where it's like everything. That's what makes middle school so great if like you're the kind of teacher that's up for it. But not everything changes. Like kids, I've known kids from kindergarten to 8th grade, and their personality never changed. Like it grew, but certain things don't change. Like the very core of a person's being is the same every year I've known them in their whole life. So it's a good question, like what things change, because the changes are so intense and dramatic, but at the same time there's like a very core to someone, like their heart, I would almost, or their soul, something like that, is like the same.
Another one about memories, just so, what's one of the most important memories you think you've ever had?
I always come back to that memory of I think I told you about it the last night at Costa Rica, like my best friend from middle school. Like I just remember the end of, like all my best memories were sports memories and were with my friends who we played sports together, and there's like something that brings people together about losing. And so I remember like hugging my best friend. It was the first time like we really acknowledged how much we care about each other, and in like a culture where it was not safe for like two guys to hug each other. Like you never would do it. But at the end of this baseball game when we all lost, we were all very sad. It was like cool. It was okay to like show that emotion. It was like the first time I let down my guard. And that was the summer after 8th grade. And then I went to a different school. He went to a different school. And then he died of a drug overdose, like, I don't know, 10 years after that probably. But I hadn't seen him in a long time. Like his family still lived in town, my family. I'd seen him a couple times. But like having like your whole life best friend, and then having this like one moment where it was like you actually like acknowledged your like closeness and vulnerability and everything, having that moment and then going totally different ways and then losing him, I think that's one of my most important memories. It reminds me, like there were a lot of things I could have done differently in that relationship and that friendship, because I saw it's not like people just die of a drug overdose suddenly. Like usually there's a lot of things that lead to it, and you can sort of see it happening, and we all knew it could happen, but we didn't say anything or do anything, and then it did. So that memory of that closeness combined with the memory of when I found that he died, it's like I learned never to keep my mouth shut when there's an actual problem. Like never let it go, because if you do, things are going to go horribly anyway. So if someone gets mad at you for like trying to intervene, that's okay, because it's like the other alternative is worse. So that's one memory that I had not thought about until that trip. I had thought about it a long time, but I've been thinking about it. So now you have to go through the whole thing, right? And you do like, and you try to figure it's this one here.